Welcome to Legal Minds. I know it's been a few weeks since I've actually made a video. I did intend on making some others, but I got caught up. I was really busy. But good news, I got my public law, my separation of powers essay back, and I got a low first. I can improve on it. There is a lot to be done to improve it, but in this video I'm going to be providing some of the notes I used that helped me get a first, and I'm also going to be providing some additional notes from further research that I've done. So I hope this video is of benefit to you. I'm actually going to break the video down into several parts, otherwise it's just going to be a really long video. And in this video I'm just going to be giving you a brief introduction on the separation of powers, the concept itself, the government bodies, where the idea derives from, and so on. So what do we mean by separation of powers? Well, the concept itself refers to the idea that each government body has its own individual and exclusive powers and personnel that only they have. So for example, the executive has certain personnel and powers, so does the legislature, so does the judiciary. That's what the concept refers to. Now, whether or not we actually have separation of powers and the extent to which we have separation of powers, I'm going to come on to later. This is just a brief introduction. Now, the concept, the idea, the need for separation of powers derives from 17th century philosopher Montesquieu, who essentially believed that there can be no liberty without separation of powers, and that each government body must act as a separate entity. However, he did believe that each government body should act as a check on the other, so there should be checks and balances put in place to prevent power from swaying too far into the hands of one body and to prevent the abuse of power. This links to the phrase absolute power corrupts all, and I think that's what Montesquieu had in mind when he came up with this theory that there can only be true liberty with a clear separation of power. So in the UK we have three government bodies. These are the legislature, the executive and the judiciary. The legislature is composed of the Queen, hence the phrase Queen's Parliament or Queen in Parliament, the House of Commons and the House of Lords, and they are the primary lawmaker. They make laws, they change laws, they debate on government bills, and they are supposedly the sovereign body. And then there's the executive, which is composed of the Queen, hence the phrase head of state, the Prime Minister, cabinet ministers, councils, local councils, civil servants, etc. They're also known as the administration. The executive formulates policy, investigates areas of law in need of reform, and that run the country essentially. And then there's the judiciary, which refers to the Queen again, hence the phrase, I think, the Queen's courts. The court system as a whole, not just the judges, but the court system as a whole, and of course the judges. When we refer to the judiciary, we normally mean the judges, but it does refer to the court system as a whole. And the judges interpret the law and apply the law, and according to William Blackstone, they declare the law. So this suggests that although Parliament makes the law, the judges say this is what the law is. So they take what Parliament creates and they say this is what the law is. They declare it. It's also vital, and I would say it is vital, that you become aware of the Wade standards if you're not already aware of them, because the Wade standards can be used to assess whether or not we have separation of powers or the extent in which we have separation of powers. It's really good to know these standards and compare them to what's going on, you can say. And Professor Wade essentially said that there should be no overlap in personnel, no overlap in function, and there should be no control or interference with another government body. So no government body should control or interfere in any way with another body. However, he also stated that the separation of powers is nothing more than the independence of the judiciary. So Professor Wade essentially believed the most important thing when it comes to separation of powers is the independence of the judiciary. And you could therefore say that there's actually a conflict between Montesquieu's standards of separation of powers and Wade's, because Montesquieu believed that there should be checks and balances to prevent power swaying too far into the hands of one body. He also believed in dissonant harmony, so he believed that political conflict is a good thing for that very reason. However, Professor Wade believed that no government body should interfere with a single body, there should be no control, and conflict should be kept to an absolute minimum. Now, the USA's government model, their structure is the epitome of pure, absolute separation of powers. Congress is the legislature. They have their very own personnel, their very own functions. The executive is the president and the vice president. Again, they only operate within that body, within the executive. They have their own, powers, and they are the executive. And then there's the judiciary, or the Supreme Court, which again has its own exclusive powers and personnel. In the UK, there are actually overlaps in personnel and in function. It's not as clear cut as the USA model, for example. And in the next few videos I'm going to make, that's what I'm going to be discussing. Whether or not we have separation of powers, the extent in which we have separation of powers, any checks and balances that are in place for the overlaps that we have in our government system. So be sure to check out the next video. I'm hoping to release it within the next few days, and it's going to be a lot more extensive than this one. This was just a really brief introduction. The next video should be a good 10, 15, maybe 20 minutes long, possibly longer, depending on how much time I have to get it done. But keep a lookout for it, because it's going to have a lot of content. It's going to be really extensive and really thorough. And remember, there are going to be several parts to this series.